Maintaining your fences on your property, if you live in the country, well, even if you live in town, but if you have fences, maintenance needs to be a priority. Well, what's up guys, this is Daniel from Arms Family Homestead, and in today's video we're going to talk about one of the very commonly overlooked huge expenses of owning a rural property, and that is fences and fence maintenance. But before we get too far into it, I just want to let you guys know that today's video is sponsored by Exmark Mowers, the makers of professional mowing equipment. Fences can be one of the biggest expenses on a rural property, if you, depending on what you buy. If you go out and you buy a piece of property that's never been fenced off for farm use, it can cost a lot of money. There's all kinds of different fences, so we use lots of different types of fences here on our farm. This is a sheep and goat fence, so it's a wire mesh. This is 4 feet tall with a barbed wire strand on top and bottom. And then there's, you know, your standard barbed wire fence, you know, 5 or 6 single strands of barbed wire, mostly used for cattle, not so much for goats and sheep. But then we've also got our Premier One netting. This is an electrified netting around our garden. So there's lots of different kinds of fences. But one of the most commonly overlooked things is the maintenance on those fences and keeping all the weeds and the grass. Well, grass is not so much a problem with most fences except the electrified netting. But keeping briars and trees and things from growing up and destroying your fence, I think, is a huge thing that a lot of people forget about. So think about this. Remember the last time you were out driving around on a country road, and look at those fences. And a lot of those places, the fence will just be completely grown up with trees. And what happens is birds eat seeds, obviously. Then they come land right here and sing their pretty little song and do their business, and it falls right at the fence. And then even if, you know, you have guys that mow, or may mow their yard on the inside, they brush hog the pasture, but you never really get right up next to the fence a lot of times. So those trees grow right up in that fence row, and that can really destroy your fence. So for me personally, I just think it's a huge thing. I think it's a great idea to take care of your fences, because I mean, a fence like this is very expensive to put up. And if you just come out here once a year, so maybe twice a year, mow up next to it, you may need to spray some kind of herbicide, or at least just take a pair of limb loppers and clip up those small trees and those small bushes that are growing up. It's going to save you a ton of money in the long run. I'm going to use this fence right here as a prime example. So I'm outside of my property. This is my driveway, it goes down into our property, but this is actually my neighbor's. And this fence has been taken care of because I maintain it to make our driveway entrance look a little more appealing. So once a year or so, I come through, trim all the little trees out of here, and I mow along this, you know, 2 or 3 times a season, and that's about it. But this fence I actually built. So when I was in high school, or well, my entire life as a kid growing up, my dad had a fence building company. So we built this barbed wire fence probably, gosh, it's been a long time ago, probably in the early 2000s. I'm gonna say between 1998 and 2000. And it's a nice barbed wire fence. It's not perfectly maintained. I've got some more trimming to do, but I try to take care of it, even though it's not on my property. I mean, we're supposed to be good neighbors, right? We're called to love thy neighbor. Well, I'm trying to help my neighbor out by taking care of his fence, and it also looks good on my side. But let me show you the same fence where I've stopped maintaining it over the years. I only take it so far down, so we're probably gonna be 200 yards from my driveway. Let me show you what it'll look like in 20 years if you don't take care of a fence. So my driveway is right down there. You can see the mailbox and my buggy, and this is the fence, probably about 200 yards, maybe a little less, and I maintain it all the way down to the stretch post. So from there down, it's in pretty good shape. The fence is doing really, really well. It's going to keep the cows in. You're never going to have any problems with that fence. Then there's this. As you can see, this is literally what a fence will look like within 20 years. I mean, look at the size of this tree. Just look how much has grown up in the fence line. So as I was saying, the birds will land on the fence, drop their little seeds, and you can tell that cedar tree is intertwined in every wire on the fence. And there are hundreds and maybe even thousands of trees. So if something happens to this fence, it's going to be next to impossible to repair because you've got so many trees. And if you'll look, you can tell the county is having to take care of it now, because this is a county road. You got the right of way. So now the county's having to come through with a giant machine and trim all those limbs back every year or two. And you literally can't even tell there's a fence in there. So you can see, you know, the landowner spent thousands and thousands of dollars to put this new perimeter fence in several years ago. I mean, it has been 20 years, but a good, well-built fence can last a lifetime. There's a lot of fence lines here in Oklahoma that still have old bodark timber posts, and the wire's still intact from like the 1950s, but they're maintained and they're taken care of and they last. When you let something grow up like that and have all those trees growing in there, the cows are going to just get through it. You know, if that fence ever gets broken, it's hard to see. It's hard to know if a tree falls on the fence. It's, you know, you have cars that go through there, and then repairing that is next to impossible. So earlier I mentioned the use of actual herbicides to kill the grass or kill the weeds or kill the brush and briars and things that grow up in your fence. And I didn't use a lot of herbicide this year. The only thing I've sprayed so far is just around the perimeter of my garden. Guys, I know a lot of people are against herbicide, and I get it, I totally understand, but sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to make things work. So this is the Electrified Premier 1 netting. And the main thing with this stuff is you don't want the grass growing up in it, because that will kill your electricity. It'll ground out. So I did spray a glyphosate product like Roundup around just, you know, maybe a foot wide strip at the bottom of this fence. And that's the only place I've sprayed any herbicide this year. You wouldn't have to necessarily use a glyphosate or Roundup on your main fences, because you're not necessarily trying to kill out the grass. The grass isn't always the problem unless it's an electric fence. If it's just a sheep and goat wire or something that sits on the ground like we have over here, you could use a product like Remedy, which is a selective herbicide that's only going to kill your brush and woody plants and briars. Here in Oklahoma, we have a huge problem with green briars growing up in a fence, and they'll take over the whole fence in a matter of a couple years. You can spray Remedy on those green briars. It'll kill those, but it won't harm the grass necessarily. getting hot out here. So as you can see, maintaining your fences on your property, if you live in the country, well, even if you live in town, but if you have fences, maintenance needs to be a priority. And I don't just mean trimming all the trees that fall down, but you got to think about everything that's going to grow up. And building a fence, especially if you've got, you know, several acres and you're building a long stretch of fence, can be one of the biggest expenses that you have on a rural property. So maintaining those fences is huge, and it's just kind of a pet peeve of mine when people don't maintain their fences, because I know how much work it is to build one, and I know how expensive it is to build one. And it doesn't take a lot of work. Whether you want to use the herbicides or you want to do a mechanical control, totally up to you, but it just takes a few minutes every year, really, to do proper maintenance. And I highly suggest, if you build a new fence, you can kind of see behind me, this is an old fence here, it's not new, but I think it's important to keep a fence row wide enough that you can come through, you know, 2 or 3 times a year and mow a couple strips, whether you do it on your Exmark mower or you do it with your shredder behind your tractor. Try to keep, you know, 8 or 10 feet on either side of that fence, and it just makes it so much easier. I'm not gonna lie and say all of my fences on my property are nice and clean and clear. There's several that I haven't been able to get to that go off through the timber that you basically can only get to by foot. But over time, as we build new fences, I try to make it a priority to keep a wide fence row, a wide clearance on both sides, and then that can double for other things too. So yeah, you are able to mow it, keep it clean, keep the trees out of it, but then it can become a fire break. So then if your neighbor's property catches on fire and they've got a wildfire, you may have a 20 or 30 foot strip there that you can maintain and control and be able to stop a fire. I also like to be able to just patrol, as silly as a word as that sounds, but I like to be able to walk the boundaries on my property. And if my fence lines are all grown up and you can't even see through it, it makes it hard to get in there and actually just enjoy the property. So guys, fence maintenance sounds like a piddly little thing, but I feel like it's a very important thing that gets overlooked by many rural property owners. So anyways, guys, as I said earlier, huge shout out to Exmark Mowers, the makers of professional lawnmowers, for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to visit exmark.com/backyard. I'll leave a link in the description box. Go check it out. There's a ton of other awesome creators on there posting all kinds of great videos, from outdoor cooking, backyard living, lots of things for the patio, how-tos, tutorials, recipes, all kinds of cool stuff. And my buddy Mike from Outdoors with the Morgans is also part of the Exmark company, so be sure to go check out Mike over there. But anyways, guys, that's all I've got for today. I know it seems like a piddly little video, but I feel like it's important to me and a lot of people overlook it. So guys, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Y'all have a great day, and as always, we'll see you on the next video.